we can actually maximize as we go forward for the next 30 years uh, from our retirement plan strategies and from that perspective, right? So, again, as I said, warm welcome to everyone. What I've seen is, I've seen approximately 30 years in telecom, right? I've been with Tata Communications for the last 30 years. 20 years of that was in the leadership position. And in my position as a leader, I've also sat across multiple people across time, right? And spoken to them about performance reviews. I've spoken to people about their concerns around retirement strategies, life goals, and so on and so forth. So that's all of that, I would say, is something that I've tried to put across in this presentation deck. Obviously, along with the learnings that I've had in the last 1.5 odd years when I went through multiple certifications. So typically, you study, get educational education, and then get practical experience. In this case, there's a lot of practical experience over 30 years, and then there are educational certifications to back that. Is how I would like kind of put my experience on this. So hope that by the end of the session, most of you would have. Obviously, many of you would already have a fair idea, but I think you will only get a better sense in terms of how we should be moving forward in this kind of stuff. As Vaibhav said, I advocate the balanced ambition philosophy because I think that's very, very critical. That's the philosophy I've led my life with. And I understand for this group also it would be useful because it's not only all about growth, right? Because the growth phase, in some sense, in our career and so on and so forth, we have already kind of come. Uh, at the age that we are 50, 55, 60, you move more from a growth phase to the protection. So you need to just kind of balance both the sides of it. And I think that's why I thought it is also apt to start talking about the philosophy because most of the slides out here will actually showcase the philosophy playing out in terms of strategy. So on and so forth. So with that, let me just move on. To the next slide. It's kind of a disclaimer. There's lots to read out there, but net and sum of it, the conversation that we are having today is more from an educational purpose, not specific investment advice because this is more generic in nature. It's just to get an idea of which direction we should move, what's the strategy that we should adopt in our life going forward. So for any personalized investment advice, obviously you need to look for a financial advisor who can take you because each individual has a different risk appetite, different circumstances. So it's best that you discuss with your financial advisor and take your specific cases forward. But otherwise, the rest of the presentation, I'm covering around 22 odd slides. So some of them I will run past, some of them are critical. I will go slightly slower. But any questions you have, feel free to put it on the chat and we'll try and answer that towards the end in one single consolidated sheet. And if you need any further deep dive, then you can definitely call me up separately or we will try and set up another session on that. Okay, so what are we trying to cover out here, right? As I said, 90 odd minutes is what we will go. It's a holistic view that I'm giving. There's no specific product-wise, specific deep dive, as I said, but a holistic view in terms of how can the retirement be planned. So one obviously is we need to ensure that we know the number that we are chasing. What is it that we are really needing for our retirement? So we'll just talk through that for some time, how to find that number out. We will talk about an age specific strategy because each one of us, as I said, will be in different ages, starting from 50, 55, 60, and some of them would be more than that. So we'll talk about strategies that we can follow for each of the age. And how do we then go about and calculate and implement? Because unless and until you action what we are learning today here, it doesn't make sense. So I'll try and see whether we can give some templates which you can go back, take back with you and use it in your day life and see how you can really action what is being mentioned out here as a strategy. At the end of it, it's not all about income because what actually matters is the income that actually comes into your bank. And that's where, you need to understand how can I make whatever I've earned through my strategy, through the portfolio that has been built, how can I make it very tax efficient, right? So that the withdrawals are very tax efficient out there. So we'll talk about that. There would be some of us who are a bit late on this journey or towards retirement. I've just put across three or four ideas, I may say, which, if you fall in a particular bracket, you can test them out and see whether, those will be something that will help you with a catch-up mechanism so that you can bridge the savings gap, right? It's not a, it's not a sure shot 100%, but as I said, specific situations, you can apply it. I've given those situations, you can try that out and see where it goes. And then many a times we understand a lot of stuff around, various things which are out in the private world, but there are certain government schemes also which can be leveraged. So we'll just talk about some of those out there. At the end of it, as I said, this is a holistic plan that we are putting together. So healthcare cost and all that stuff also really matter. So I will try and also touch upon that fact. And then at the end of it all, an estate planning, because after you have got the money, you have earned the money, you have invested the money, and you have utilized whatever you need to utilize during your retirement period. You also expect to hand it over as a legacy to somewhere, right? So how can you go about an estate? We will also try and cover some pieces out there. And as I said earlier, unless and until we put things into action, the whole system might not really be useful. So we can put a 90-day action plan, which helps you move forward from whatever you have learned on this particular session, right? What I can assure you at the end of it, what you will leave with is, confidence on how to move forward. There will be quite a bit of clarity and also a concrete strategy to navigate your retirement plans, right? With that, a quick question, because I think that's the starting point for this. Vaibhavi, if you could just put a poll, I just want to get a sense in terms of
Yeah.
how many of us on this call actually know the number that is required for retirement, the corpus that is required for retirement. Do we have an idea, or is there a humongous number of people who really know this number, or you have a fair idea of where you are, what you need, or there's absolutely no idea on what you need?
So, all
I think
right.
the poll is up
So,
there. So if
yes,
you
the
could
poll
just
is up there. People are responding. If we could get a few more people to also respond, then I'll be closing it in the next 30 seconds.
great.
Miss Vidya, it will just show up on your screen. So right now it's going to be visible to everybody on Zoom. If you're on your phone, then maybe if you swipe through a few screens, you'll be able to see the poll.
Can you print out see the poll, please?
So sir, this would be a Zoom settings issue on your end because right now the poll is visible to everybody else. So if you, yeah.
I can hear you. I can hear the speaker. I can see the slides. Why can't I be see the poll?
So this might be a Zoom issue on your end. So maybe if you're joining through your phone and if you swipe through the screens, you might be able to see it. But no worries. It's a very simple yes, no, maybe question, and this is just to get an understanding. Mr. Menon just wants to get an understanding of whether if people have thought about the retirement corpus number. Mr. Menon, I'm going to close the poll now. About 52 participants have answered, and I'll also display the results.
Sure, that's okay. Just to get a sense of where we are, right?
Yes. Is this visible to everyone?
It is. It is. It is. So what we are saying is around 30% of the 52 participants who have responded. So approximately 15 people know where we are. Around 50 of them, 50% don't know. 26 are caught in between. So that's fair. I think that's a fair response on the poll. So what I'll try and do is, by the end of this session, at least the 44 and the 26 who are unsure or not aware will at least have a fair idea in terms of directionally what's the requirement that you will be able to calculate. As I said, template will be given at the end of the session when you send an email, and with that you will get your final, which is there. Till then, let's focus most of our conversation around the rest of the pieces, which is the specific strategy and so on and so forth. So we'll get to that. So by moving on, I'll get on to my next slide. With that, thank you, Vaibhavi. So, this is something which I think most of us would be aware, but I try to. on a slide so that we are completely cognizant of what is being mentioned here. There is obviously challenges around, retirement, and this is the reality that we see in India today, right? There are three big issues which are there. One, definitely there is increased longevity, okay, and that's primarily because of healthcare improving and so on and so forth. So we are seeing that, life expectancies going forward is going to extend more towards 85 to 90. So just like you have been having a career graph of around 25, 30 years, 35 years, you should be expecting around 25 to 30 years of life in the retirement phase, more or less, right? Typically today, urban areas, you have approximately 77 to 80% life expectancies, but that is expected to move higher towards the 85 and 90, and that's why I put the 85 and 90 numbers out there. Definitely, there is today crisis around pension. Earlier, you had government, not only government, you had most organizations providing pension. Today, that has stopped. But there are few, government organizations which do offer pension, but the rest of us, all of us, have to self-fund, and that's one of the big issues which has come up. Inflation obviously is playing its own part. As we are all aware, with a 6% inflation, you're looking at, your monthly expenses at least doubling every 10 years. So that is what. So if it is 50,000 rupees today, then you're looking clearly at around 1 lakh or more 10 years from now being your monthly expenses. I think, more than the monthly expenses, what's going to really affect us in this age and time is also going to be healthcare, because the healthcare inflation is more towards around 12 to 15%. And what that means is you're looking at, if an hospital expense is approximately 5 lakhs today, in the next 15 odd years, it's going to go to around 25 lakh of rupees. So that's the retirement reality that we are facing as we move forward. So these are the three triple challenges, as I said, and we need to figure out a way how we can navigate longevity issues, inflation, and healthcare costs, which will require some amount of planning, right? Just like we have planned for our careers, I am pretty sure that, there's a lot of planning which will be required also to navigate around this. But that's why, this session, and I'm hoping that we will be able to execute some of the pieces that we talked through this session, right? Some of us might also have to add, saying that, there is also a declining joint family support. Earlier, you had that luxury of having family support system, which helped us, take care of the retirement reality and the expenses around it. But even that has gone through, right? So, as I said, what we will try and figure out now is how do we generate that monthly income for around 30 odd years, which will help us outperform inflation, manage the market volatility, and also minimize taxes. So, with that, let me just move on. So this is the basic, right? If we haven't done this in the past, this is the starting point for everything. You know, Everything has to be based on some goals. And I'm just giving an overview as to how do you go about, because even if you are starting your retirement planning today, it is still a goal. You still have a finite timeline that you can think about. It could be 5 years for some of you, it could be 10 years for some of you, 15 years for some of you. You still have time to achieve whatever goal you need to get to your retirement. So sometimes we feel that, oh, I've reached 50. I don't know where I'm going. I don't have my corpus in place. I don't also know the number. How do I get there? So that's where this particular slide actually helps you. As I said, some of the templates will help you calculate the number. So you have the number, that is the target number in mind. You have the timeline in mind. You just have to prioritize this and see. And this is not only for retirement, right? This is true for every goal, whether it be child education, your new car, your new house. It could be, as I said, retirement. It could be marriage for your children. All of that. If you can define the goals, you can achieve those goals because those are finite numbers and we can get there. But if you ask me what would be the number one priority, I would say retirement happens to be the number one priority. Many of us get emotionally attached to children education, marriages, and so on and so forth. All of them are important. There's no doubt about it. But the way I look at it, all of them can be funded. There are different ways in which you can fund it. But you go out in the market and ask for funding your retirement. I don't think any bank is out there sitting and going to fund your retirement. So there's nobody who is going to fund your retirement except yourself. So you will have to put that as priority number one and then move forward with the rest of it. Okay, rest of the priorities that you'll have for whatever goals. So as I said, whether you're 50, you're 55, you're 60, please categorize your goal of retirement into short, medium, and long, because that's how your planning will happen. That's how we will strategize to get there. And that's how we will make our investments around that. Because what is important is risk matching. Because if you're 10 years old, the risk could be slightly lower for you to get into certain investments. If you are 5 years old, to your retirement, the risk will be slightly more moderate, right? There will be risk associated. If you are at 60, you need to be extremely careful, because capital protection becomes the most critical thing rather than growth. So each age will need a different strategy, and we'll talk through that as we go along. So coming back to the big question, right? How much is enough? That's the big question that we keep asking. We are not very sure. Many people, actually postpone their retirements because they're not sure whatever I have saved. Yes, I know I have a corpus. I know what is needed, but I'm not sure whether that will be enough, right? So there are two big thumb rules that you can apply out here, just to get the sense of achievement and to get a bit more a feeling of stability, right? And reduce your stress. As long as you have the 25x rule and the 4% withdrawal rule in mind, you will know that, you are in the space that you need to be. So the simple rule, now this was based on a study which was done on the US stock market and the bond market, which was done in 1998. And they had considered a 30%, 30-year retirement horizon at that point of time. Now, what they said is, if you can multiply your annual expenses by 25, and when I mean annual expenses, you will have to look at your annual expenses at the time of retirement, whether the retirement is at 50, if the retirement is at, 55 or 60. Ideally, if you're taking 60 and you're at 50, then you need to take a future value of their expenses. As I said, 6% inflation, you're looking at doubling your monthly expense from here to the next 10 years. So if it's 50,000 today, consider 1 lakh, 1 lakh multiplied by 12, 12 lakhs, 12 lakhs multiplied by 25. That makes it 3 crores. So that's your retirement corpus target that you're going after. If you are 50 today and you're retiring at 60, for each of your age, you can find out depending on the goal, the time, retirement, and so on and so forth. But I'm just giving you an example out here. Once you have got that corpus ready, then the rule also says you can withdraw up to 4% of the corpus. And if you do that, and if you can do that with inflation beating returns, remember in US in 1997, the inflation was around 2%. So their inflation is very different from India's inflation. But at 2%, if you withdraw that, you get 2% portfolio returns and above, which is inflation beating returns, then you can continue withdrawing 4% every year, and till perpetuity it will last you. That's what the rule states. So these are the two things that come into play. Now I looked at it and I said, the logic is not very similar for India, right? Because India faces multiple issues, and you are seeing that right now, one playing out, right? It is called as a sequencing risk. Okay, what do you mean by sequencing risk? You decided you want to retire. You decided that you will retire. Now you have a corpus in hand. You went and invested it somewhere. The markets didn't play out the way you wanted it to play out, and you start losing more and more portfolio returns and portfolio value, then some of this modeling will not work for you. So we need to factor that. And typically it's more and more of that is happening today. So we need to just keep that in mind. Also, India inflation has been 6 to 7% for a long period of time. You have 35 to 40 years of retirement going in, right? We normally retire at around 60, not necessarily US, 65 or never. Many people don't retire in US, but both of that possibility is out there. But we have a higher retirement age that we want to kind of consume. After retirement, there will be more number of years that we will have to consume, right? And then obviously there is a healthcare cost. So putting all of that together, I think an India safe solution, if you have to call it, then I would say we should target a 33x corpus number. So what was 12 lakh per year, 3 crores? I would say a safer number from an India perspective would be in the region of around 4 odd crores. And with that, take further safety if you're being conservative. And if you are in a position, then I think you should consider around 3.5% odd rather than the 4% withdrawal. So a combination of these things is what you should look for when you're calculating your number. So once you go through this process, all the maybes and the no's will have an answer. which, as I said, is specific to you as an individual, your circumstances, and the risk taking ability you have, because your returns ratio will depend based on that. I hope this is useful. We'll come back to it. As I said, we will also have a template that we can share so that you can do your own calculation. You don't have to do the math on your own. We will help you with the calculation by sharing the template that is required to get there. But this is the broad logic on which we will now take the rest of the conversation forward. And I'll move a bit quickly, as I said, because there are around 20-25 slides. If you have any questions, we can come to that subsequently. So now that we have decided what's the number that is required, what's the toolkit for us to get to that number? So I've just given you the wide range, the wide canvas. We'll pick and choose some of this based on the age that we are on, the risk capacity we have, the risk tolerance that we have, all those bases. You have to pick up some of this. But the toolkit is out there, right? There are some of these government-backed safe vehicles which are there, cutting across EPF, VPF, you have got PPF, you have got senior citizen schemes, you have got Pradhan Mantri via Vandana Yojana scheme. So there are multiple schemes out there. You can always choose one of those based on your, as I said, risk tolerance. Then you have got market linked, right? You have got the NPS, you have got equity mutual funds where you can. Now, it's impossible to deep dive into each one of them as an investment vehicle because that's not the objective of this session. But if someone wants specifics, then obviously alternatives available. But otherwise, at the end of the session, if you have any specific question on each one of them, I will share it. But right now, these are the highlights of the schemes that you have. Then obviously you have the debt mutual funds, we have bank deposits, and then we have gold. And there are other things I have not covered. All the assets which are available out there. Broadly speaking, if you pick and choose from these assets, you can put a strategy together for your portfolio, and that's the thought process. Now, if I may move forward, now let's look at, if you are at age 50, right? Uh, if you are at age 50, this typically, I would say, for most of us, would be our peak earning decade because you have gone through 20-25 years of work experience. You have reached somewhat a middle management, senior leadership position within the organization, and you are in some sense some kind of a comfort, right? And you at least have most of us would have had our EMIs for home loans and all that stuff covered. Some of our children would have already gone into the next stage and so on and so forth. But you have still 10 to 15 years because not everybody retires at 60. Some of us still want to continue slightly further. We do part-time, consulting courses, or we do something else, and we keep ourselves engaged for another 5 odd years. So I've kept a range of around 10 to 15 years after retirement, right? That's how I've looked at it. Now, this, as I said, is your peak earning year, maximum saving capacity, which then also helps you from a compounding perspective. And if there are ups and downs in the market, just like what we are seeing today, it also gives you sufficient time to recover from these market downturns. Because as you would be familiar and you would have seen it in the past, whether it be COVID, whether it be Lehman Brothers, whether it be dot-com burst, markets normally are turbulent for around 2 to 3 years at the max. And then they go slightly sideways, but around 6, 7, 8 years, they come back and they come back with a bang, and you typically get a CAGR of around 12%. That's how historical results have shown. So you can say that if you have got a safe 10-year period, I think there is chances for me to recover, a good chance for me to recover, right? But some of us, obviously, as I said, would have other challenges because if you have not done enough saving till now, then and if you're starting off from here, then you have lost compounding time, which is the biggest kind of a driver for all of us to invest is the compounding, and compounding along with time, as they say, is the eighth wonder of the world, right? So then you will have to look at higher investment values. So more money has to be put in to get you to your final goal, which has to be there, right? Because at some point of time, some of you are still going through your financial priorities like children education, weddings, and those kind of. So those could be the challenges that are there. But at a broad level, if you target that you're looking at around 1.5 to 2.5 crores by the age of 60, 65, and with high equity exposure, I think it is something which is possible. You can utilize multiple tools, like SIP, step up SIP, BPF, NPS, all of this, a combination of these three, four, five things can get you there. And I've just given you an example. Even if you get 50K per month for 10 years at 12%, you're looking at around 1.2 crores. Now, depending on your, as I said, monthly expenses and so on and so forth, your retirement corpus required, you have to plan this out. and get there. But I've just given you a fair idea in terms of which direction you should move, and which are the investment vehicles that you should consider if you're looking for this kind of an outcome, right? But at the end of the day, we need to remember that each year from here on is going to matter. Every rupee that you strategically allocate is going to matter. So the choice of your portfolio is definitely going to matter. Okay, it cannot be okay, dal diya dekha jayega types, right? You have to be very strategic. You have to be very specific in what you're doing, and there has to be a plan around it. Now, when you get to the age 55, typically this is your final accumulation sprint, and I normally consider this like, if you are into cricket, then in an ODI game, typically the 41 to 50 overs, right? That's called the power play. That's also the time when when the team decides ki what's my final score going to look like, and what am I really going to put up as a final score for the opposition team to chase. That's the time when you have to make a decision based on the number of wickets that are left with you. If you have got 8 wickets, you can easily add in those 10 overs. You can go hell for leather, chase 100 more, 120 odd runs more. But if you have got only 2 wickets, then you need to figure out, okay, now I need to be more careful. I need to figure out whether I need stability. Do I need to protect? Do I need to get to the 48 over and then make the call? So those decisions have to be made, I think, during this time. But at the end of the day, in a regular game, you will see that most people would have protected the wickets, and they are now looking at accelerating. So you need to look for this as an acceleration. This is your final push. This is when you start accumulating your wealth. At the same time, start thinking about preservation of your wealth, and that's where we spoke about the balanced ambition part of it. I think this is the age when you really have to mix both of them, blend both of them together, right? Because this is the age when you will be at your highest earnings. Okay, this is also the age when most of us would have reduced expenses. Your children would be settled, home loans are paid, your existing corpus has gained over time, right? And it has reached a stage where it has meaningful wealth out there. Correct. But if that's not happened, as I said, there would always be some people who will have had limited compounding time. There would have been earlier, there would have been some expenses which have actually caught on. Then we need to think of, and that's where what I spoke about later, which I'll speak about later, is how do you, if you missed some timelines, then how do you really step up to it now? So we'll talk about that. But for the rest of you, I think most of it would be utilize the time to become a bit more aggressive, but also start protecting. Correct. You need to sprint, as I say, at the end to the finish, but you should not be tripping. So we need to have that balanced way of looking at it, and the planning should be in that sense, right? Your contributions will start increasing towards, I would say, NPS. NPS. You can start increasing your contribution towards the VPF and PPF, because it's another only 5 more years, and you can get all of that out with a good 8.5, 8.2% returns tax free, which are coming in. At 60, I would say that's your transition phase, right? That's when we are all more or less out of the career path. We have retired. Primary objective will now shift to how do we preserve our accumulated capital, and how do I ensure that I get month on month sure short income, because it becomes your income generation strategy, right? So that's the phase that we will be in. One big advantage we get when we enter into this phase, obviously you will benefit from the lump sum money, EPF, gratuity, and all that stuff which comes and sits with us. The other big advantage is there is potentially, there will be reduced expenses, because our personal expenses also go down. As I said, most of our goals would have been met by then, and you also get the benefit of senior citizen schemes and some higher tax exemptions. So those are the advantages that you have there. But then what we need to really look for is, how do we ensure that there is long-term sustenance, right? And as said earlier, some bit of you need to ensure that a withdrawal management mechanism is put in place. Healthcare costs will increase. As I said earlier, we are looking at 12%, 15%, inflation. So we need to factor all of this that we go in with. And hence, you will see that across the three slides and the phases, you are seeing that there is a glide path that I've given for, equity, right? Highest equity when you're at around 50, slightly lesser equity percentage allocation to equity when you're 55. And as you move into the 60s, you're looking at lesser of equity and more of fixed income. So that's how, you need to plan. It's a glide path, as you know. Um, Aircrafts, when they land, aircrafts don't land from 35,000 feet to 0 feet overnight, right? They just don't drop onto the airport. They go through a glide path, right? So a similar kind of a glide path we need to factor in our mind for ourselves, and we need to think of how do we really achieve that. At each age group, we need to really start looking at how do I change and balance some of my portfolio so that I get to a point where as I move towards 60, I have the corpus that is required. I have some of my monies in growth funds, growth kind of a portfolio, but I also have a lot of income generating portfolio, right? So that I also have stability, I have protection as we go. But as we get into 60, mantra would be protect what you have and ensure that you get, generate steady income as you go along. We spoke about catch-up mechanisms, right? Now I've got some four of them as I would say ideas that we can think of. Definitely one of them is your voluntary PF. Please continue increasing 100% of your basic salary. You can contribute if you wish to, because that will only give you a good benefit of 8.25 per annum tax-free return, right? And that's huge if you really look at it, comparing versus any other tax-free tax-free options that you have out there. Who actually benefits from this? I think anybody who is 50 to 58 has monthly surplus should go for it. They should ensure that they are maximizing on this, especially if you are playing catch up. Okay, because it's a safe instrument with a very high return that you're seeing, and it's all tax free, which is coming your way. So I think that's one way that you can actually help yourself. The second way definitely is a step up SIP strategy, because many of us think that, I've put my money into a SIP and SIP will grow and it will continue to grow and continue to grow and continue to grow. But if you really look at it, if you are in a position to increase your SIP every year, you get your salaries, there are increments which come with your salary, rather than spending it out as an expense because your SIP is going on. If you can just step it up by around 10% every year or 12% every year, you will see the amount of difference it makes to your final value. The 30,000 SIP started 10 years back, and 10 years later, when you look at it, if you have done a step up, it's almost double the money that you have accumulated in your wealth. That's what you see on the table out there. So it makes a huge difference. So, and it is easy because you are on a growing income trajectory, most of us, right? And if that is happening within the 45 to 55-year-old, I think the best strategy that you can use is to do a step up strategy. That's something that you can work around. You can think through whether it really fits into your, where you are in your journey, and look at it. If there is an old tax regime, some of us are in the old tax regime, most of us are in the new tax regime, but people who have education loans, people who have home loans, and so on and so forth, sometimes it is beneficial to remain in the old tax regime. In that, then you obviously have, the extra 50,000 deduction that you can take, and that will help you if you're in the 30% slab, that will help you save approximately 15,600. Now, the last one, I would say, would be asset reallocation, right? Because that is also a very important component. Sometimes we just miss it because we don't think about it as deeply as we should, because there will always be some places where there is idle capital remaining, right? There is a property which is giving you low yields. There are some FDs which are giving you low yields, and there could be gold lying there, which is, you know, sitting there. It's a use asset, but not giving you the yield that you're looking for. So especially if you are someone who is, I would say, asset rich but cash flow constrained, then this is one of the strategies that you can really think of as to how do I move from where I am to do asset reallocation so that I can get, which means I will monetize my gold property and stuff and get more income, if income is what you are really looking for. Okay. Okay. Now that we have done with this, I will move on. Now that we have already decided the number, we have also figured out which are the various investment options that lie in front of us, and we are picked and chosen our investment vehicles based on the age specific strategies that we spoke about. Once all those decisions are made, then how do I best utilize them, right? And one of the ways is, I would say, an SWP is one of your critical strategies to ensure that you are tax efficient. Okay, SWP is systematic withdrawal plan. So typically, most of us, many of us, would have had in FDs a lot of our money, right? And you will see from this screen, and I've given now four options that you have at your, at your place to make a decision as to where do I go? Do I put my money in my bank FD,
Can't
safe?
see your screen.
Can't see my screen.
No.
I am still showing screen sharing. What
We
about
can
the other?
see. We can see, sir.
Yes, Mr. Matt, the screen is visible.
Yeah, ma'am, if you could just click
We
on.
can
Yeah,
see.
we can see.
I too can see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair enough.
yes, we can
Yeah.
continue. I can, ma'am, if you're facing any problems, you can write it on the chat. I can help you there. Thank you.
Probably your
Connection, internet connection or Zoom connection.
not internet connect. It
Hmm.
can be their gallery selection.
Okay.
Yes.
I will move on, and ma'am, if you could just look at it. Okay, and then so you have options, right? You have got a bank FD option, you have got a debt MF option, you have got hybrid MF option and equity option. Why did I put all these options? Because these are the options you're going to choose from most likely wherever you are in your age, right? You will choose FD, you will choose debt, you will choose hybrid, SWP, depending on hybrid MF, not SWP, which means a balanced MF in some sense. So, these are the options, and they will give you different kind of, returns. But if you really look at it, you might have invested 50 lakhs. You have these four instruments. The goal was to get 27,000. Each of these instruments can generate those 27,000, but the tax that you pay for each of these instruments are very different, especially on the fixed deposit, right? Because typically we go for fixed deposit. So because in the fixed deposit, your whole 100% of interest gets taxable. So you're looking at around 27,000 rupees of tax. Sorry, the entire 27,000 rupees is taxable. And at the end of the year, you will end up paying for this value. You'll end up paying around 65,000 rupees of tax, depending on the tax slab that you are. Right now, I consider 20% slab for the illustration purpose. So you will look at something like that as your cost tax. But at the same time, if you do an SWP, whether it be in debt, whether it be in hybrid, whether it be in equity, now these decisions will be based on, as I said, your risk profile, your risk tolerance, your risk capacity, and the advice that you get from your financial advisor and where you're on your age right now. But if you go for any of these and you do a systematic withdrawal plan, you are tax efficient because you're paying as good as zero for that. Sorry? Yeah. So, what that ends up is you're looking at around 65,000 at of investment. You're looking at around 65,000 per year of saving. Now, that's not small money. You're looking at 12 lakhs at the end of 20 years. That's not small money. It's as good as funding a child's education, a new car, many other things that a foreign vacation that you can do, many other things that you can do. And I took an example at 50 lakhs. Obviously, for higher values, it will be significantly higher. So that's one way that you can look at actually improving your tax efficiency and improving, obviously, your portfolio value, right, as you go along. In a summary, how does this help you? One, FD, 100% interest on your income slab. In the SWP, what gets taxed is only your embedded gains. And in the systematic withdrawal plan, what you are removing is the units. Number of units are coming out. Okay. And based on the number of units and the capital given.
And adjust the thing. Please understand.
Sorry, you might need to go on mute if you don't mind, please.
Yes, sir.
Is Kaipali, somebody Kaipali.
Yeah, if you could just go on mute, that will help.
I've already muted him, sir.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So that's the SWP advantage. And obviously, as I said, over a 20-year period, you're looking at around 12.5 odd lakhs of saving that you get. At the same time, your corpus keeps compounding, right? Because you're not liquidating the entire amount, only the monthly units are coming out. So there is a compounding effect which comes, so which means it keeps on growing. Your corpus keeps on growing. Other advantages, no TDS in a fixed deposit. There's a TDS which comes into play. Full flexibility. When you want to remove, you can remove. In fixed deposit, there will be penalty that will be charged. So you need to continue. Otherwise, you need to, accept that you will get slightly penalized and you'll will get lesser interest, which is not the case in a debt MF and those kind of stuff. Also, you'll see that from a nomination, if you have kept that much nomination, then getting fixed deposit money might take slightly more time than if you look at it from an MF unit perspective. You also have the ability of diversifying across mutual funds, right? And within the mutual funds also, there are multiple companies across which this gets diversified. In a fixed deposit, you are basically investing in one organization, one bank, and so on and so forth. So you get a benefit of diversification. And as I said, inflation protection is a bonus advantage, right? So all of this come together, I think it gives you one strategy in which you can look from a tax efficiency perspective. The other one is, one of my favorites is, the bucketing system. I don't know how many of you would have heard of it. Some of you might have, some of you might not have, but it's so apt for the current situation, right? Because one of the biggest concerns that people have investing in equity is primarily what happens if I put the money and the money all goes down, the index falls, and I lose money because of my investments in equity, right? So how can you really avoid that situation? You are at your retirement stage. You have a tons of money along with you. How do I really put it in a safe instrument? And I also try and maximize my growth. Both of it is what you're looking at. So that's where the bucketing comes into play. So you divide your money that you have, the corpus that you have, into three buckets. One bucket will be your immediate need. 1 to 3 years, depending on how you look at risk. 1 to 3 years, you just take it and put it in some of the safe avenues that you have, government bonds, senior savings schemes, and so on and so forth. You can think of FDs, debt mutual funds, and so on and so forth, based on all that I've said earlier. So that's one way of putting your initial set of money. The second bucket will be more in the hybrid funds, which is balanced, which has some money in debt, some money in equity. So that becomes your medium term. And in the last bucket is what you keep the bucket for equity. So there will be a percentage of money that you will keep for equity. How this helps you is you're not really you're not really putting all your money in debt because you're worried what will happen to my equity portfolio and if I put all my money into equity, right? So sometimes that indecision forces you to go for safe instruments, which is okay if you go for safe instrument, but then if your corpus is not high, it will not keep up with inflation and you will lose the time value of money, and you will need to look at other avenues to get money later on, which is, as you know, very difficult at that point of time because you've already retired. So this is one strategy that which will help you to avoid selling equity when there are crashes, because your money that you need for the next 2 3 years are already in safe buckets. You can continue getting the money from there, right? And even if it crashes, as I said earlier, if you have a 4 to 5 to 7 years period, typically crashes recover. So your money comes back to where you had at least invested, if not growing beyond a particular point, right? So that's how you can look at it, and ensure that you're providing both security as well as growth to your overall corpus at all points of time. And this just gives an example as to how you can run this, right? So let's assume that you have Mrs. Anita, who is 60 years old, corpus of around 2 crores, monthly needs is around 1 lakh of rupees. So you just divide this into three buckets, right? One bucket, 20% of the money, 40% of the money in the next bucket, and 40% of the money in the third bucket. Put these investments in safe in the first bucket. As I said, senior citizen schemes, last for 3 to 5 years. You've got FDs, you've got liquid funds, all of that out there. The expected returns are going to be in the range of 7% to 8.5%, depending on how the interest rates moves and all that stuff. It's a bit dynamic, but it's at least in that range, and it's government backed. Most of them will be also government backed, right? So you get some money out there. Monthly, you keep on getting your income. Some of the capital goes away because you'll start consuming it for your day-to-day expenses. But at the end of the day, by the time you hit your third year, your bucket two would have grown slightly. Move some of the money from bucket two to bucket one. And your bucket three would have then got that much more extended period of time to really compound and grow. And even if there were crashes, then it at least helps, recover that crash over time because you have given it time. So that's how you can look at it. This is something that you can then, keep it on a repeating loop, which means when bucket one gets exhausted, you move some money from bucket two, you move money from bucket three to bucket two, and so on and so forth, and it becomes a repeatable thing. So that's another strategy that you can use. One is, as I said, SWP. The second one is a bucketing strategy, who are moderately kind of okay with taking some amount of risk with equity and those kind of stuff. The last strategy is more for people who are not or are completely averse on taking risks, and I can understand that. And you can also, I would say, this is more likely people who are in the age group of 65, 70. What you're looking at for is completely predictable income. Inflation, even if it hits, it's not going to hit beyond 10, 15 years, depending on your lifespan and so on and so forth. But you want stable, predictable growth, right? And that's where you can think of bond laddering. What does that mean? Which means you create a ladder of fixed income investments, right? With staggered maturity. Many of us would have done it naturally in our lifetimes, but I'm just mentioning how this can be done also in your retirement, right? You just keep on adding fixed income investments with a staggered maturity, and as the deposits mature, you get your principal, you get your interest. You either use it or you reinvest. Most of you will use the interest, most of you will reinvest the principal. That's how you will continue getting a cash flow, predictable cash flow throughout your lifetime. Okay, so typically, as I said, people who are 65 plus, age and above, risk averse individuals, are some who can really look at a bond laddering kind of a strategy. Typically, I would not recommend it for anyone who is under 60, because you still have a longer lifespan to go. Inflation bites us, so you need to have protection against inflation, right? So that's how this will be, and it will work, as I said, combination of bank FDs, corporate bonds, senior citizen schemes, and so on and so forth. You can do that ranging from 1 to 7. I will show you the next slide, which actually tells you how this can be worked on, right? So if you're looking at a short-term ladder, create one for 1 to 3 years. You have got FDs, you have got which are maturing. Typically, this 7.5 might have changed to 6.5, 7, depending on where you are in your journey, senior citizen, or you are not a senior citizen yet. So you can keep some of them there. There could be a medium-term ladder, 4 to 7 years. Keep it for places where you get higher returns. A senior citizen savings scheme can give you, if you're above 60, 65, then obviously you will get higher rate of returns. You can put some money there. Corporate bonds is where you can look at it. You can put some money in tax free, and then again, debt mutual funds are there. Where you can again utilize this. At the end of the day, you see that your monthly income that you get is much more than what you had actually estimated for yourself, right? In this particular example, at least in this particular illustration. Now, having said that, now that I've put all these strategies together, question would be which strategy is right for us, right? So, so I thought, let me try and answer that. It again, as I said, depends on your age. So if you look at it, if you are 55 to 70, if you have a risk tolerance, which is reasonable, right, and moderate or high from the age that we are also considering, and if you're looking for tax efficiency, then I think a systematic withdrawal plan is the best strategy for you to go. It also gives you inflation protection, right? In terms of predictability, it's a slight iffy because you've got equity. But as I said, you're now taking 7 to 10 years after in the bucketing strategy. That's sorry, not in the bucketing strategy. Even in the systematic withdrawal strategy, you can look at it as to how you go and invest. From a longer term perspective, you can put the equity towards the back, and you can put the rest of it in the front, which is the debt funds and the bank deposits and those kind of stuff up in the front. The complexity is relatively low. And this is especially useful when you're looking at really, longer longevity periods, like people who are in, let's say just retired 60, starting 55, wanting to retire now. You can start thinking of it from that time period. Bucketing strategy again is good for anyone who is 60 to 75. uh, Again, has kind of a moderate tolerance level right now, because it is also a good tax efficient system, right, for you to really look at it. The last one was bond laddering. More, as I said earlier, anyone who is risk tolerant is low. You need to look at that. But if you honestly ask me, I think a good blend of all three could be something that we can also consider for ourselves, because there might not be one straight line that you can, if you can get into a good strategy of blending all three of them together. And that will naturally happen as you move across various buckets from an age perspective. But you can even consider doing a blend strategy out here, is what I feel. Last couple of slides before we open it up for questions. I think what we are seeing out here is what we are seeing out here is all strategies, right? In terms of retirement strategy, in terms of investments, and so on and so forth. But what also is very critical is we need to ensure that our healthcare and insurance planning goes right, because most of the time, there are places where I've seen that people say might not be so critical. I'm not really looking at insurance right now, and I'm not talking of insurance only from an health insurance perspective, because there are also other insurances like critical illness cover, personal accident cover, which some people actually ignore, but they are very critical. Healthcare costs, as I said, the reality is it's going to go at least 5 times higher in the next 15 odd years. We should expect that to happen, and we need to factor that into our overall planning, because you know earning money, investing money, earning money through the investments is of no use if you're going to spend all of that into healthcare, right? So there is a reason why healthcare insurance is there. Even if you pay some money towards it, I think it will be worthwhile, especially as we age. Same is for critical illness, because sometimes we ignore critical illness, but because we think that medical insurance is good enough. But consider a situation where you have done medical insurance, you have taken care of the hospitalization cost, but if you had to stay back at home for 6 months because of you recovering from your hospitalization, chances are that the hospitalization money is not going to come and serve you there. So that's where something like critical illness will come help you. At least it will protect the income which you are not going to get for the next 6 months, right? So that's something that you should consider. Personal accident cover is something again which helps you if you get into any disability issues. So the way I would say it is, it's not an expense, it's a vital protection for your retirement corpus. So you should consider into your overall strategy, and this piece should also be out there. I think the last two slides, yeah, last two slides. I'll just rush through these also. So we are looking at, we have done with most of it. We have done the retirement insurance. We have insured ourselves. But what do we do about legacy planning? We always kind of delay this piece, and it actually takes an afternoon for us to get this going. It is useful, for us to get our estate planning done. Most of us say we will do it tomorrow, day after, three years later, and so on and so forth, and we don't get to it. So, but it is essential because it's important that each one of us has a will. It just helps avoid complexities later on, prevents family disputes. It doesn't take time, as I said, right? So you can get this going. It's useful. Not necessary to register a will. If any one of you are keen to get a template as to what are the checklists that we should have for will generation and all that stuff, I can help with that. I can share the template for all of you. You need to get to your advocate. You need to get to an estate planner who will help you do that. It also helps you to distribute your assets in the way you want it to be distributed, not leave it to the courts or anything else if there's a dispute and so on and so forth, right? So that's something that I feel very strongly about, that each one of us should go for a will or a testament, right? Nominee updates in your mutual funds and all the places, I think helps you to facilitate faster fund transfer. Again, as I said, it's simple, but we avoid doing it. Many of us avoid doing something like this, right? It could be useful to keep a power of attorney ready, right? In case of any healthcare related issues, somebody needs to take care of your financial decisions and all that stuff if you're incapacitated, right? So it's useful to keep a power. It's not a must have, I would say, but it's something that you should think through. If you feel that it's useful to yourself, please go ahead and do that. Another way is, many of us have our assets spread across. If I ask you today, do you have a list of all your assets kept in inventory in a place that you can give it to your near and dear ones at a click of a button? I am not taking a poll on that, but I don't think everyone will have it. So it's best that you also keep an asset inventory. It just gives you a list for your family if they need it at the click of a button, right? Having said all of this, common pitfalls that we need to avoid as we get into our very critical age, golden age, retirement path. One is we should stop overestimating and being too conservative early on, right? Because power of inflation I spoke about, it's going to hit us. So we need to be slightly more aggressive. I'm not saying very aggressive, but you need to be moderately aggressive just to ensure that you're covering on the inflation part of it, right? The other one is lack of emergency fund. Many of us don't keep a fund available, cash ready to be deployed when we want to deploy. But I would advise strongly, typical is around 6 months of monthly salaries or monthly expenses, what you should kind of look for. Um, Slightly emotional, slightly controversial, but indefinite support for adult children, right? As we get into our own adulthood, I would say, later half of the adulthood, this is something that we need to be a bit more careful about. Okay. Some of us ignore healthcare challenges. So we need to, is someone speaking, or if you could just go on mute? Yeah.
Sorry, I think it was somebody was accidentally unmuted.
Yeah, I think that's okay. So one is obviously ignoring healthcare. The other problem that I also see is sometimes we chase higher returns, much higher returns than what we deserve, if I may say so, or something that we can really handle. So we just need to be careful of really going, especially as you are entering in this phase. As I said, it's a glide phase, right? The risk-taking ability should kind of factor in, or should decide where you're going. I use an example of Warren Buffett, right? Because Warren Buffett says rule number one, never lose money. He says rule number two, remember rule number one. So that's his point. I have just added something else which had come to my mind, and I said, that's fine. But I also say he also remember snakes and ladder. We all have played the game of snakes and ladder, right, in our lives. And we all know how that works. From zero, you're supposed to reach 100. And at 100, close to 100, you have got at 95 a big snake. And so if you get into that snake's jaws, where do you land? You land on 40. So all the money that you have accumulated during your lifetime, if you make the wrong decisions, especially when you're closer to your goals, then it can hurt you badly. So we just need to remember this and be very careful in terms of, how and what are we chasing, at least at this phase of time, right? And then tax planning, I just showed you how, with better and more efficient tax planning, you can save more money than what you would otherwise have lost, right? I think that's about it. Stopping SIPs during crashes, I think that's very critical, and especially during times like today. We have seen in the past that many mutual fund investors stop SIP when there is crash. They think that, I will time the market, I will do the best, I'll buy at the best price and all that stuff. And suddenly, the war ends, the Nifty just jumps by 2000 points and you have lost all the opportunity, and your SIPs have also not really gone in, right? So that's something that you need to, because SIP was designed for a reason. The SIP was designed to ensure that when the markets are high, you get less units. When the markets are low, you get more units. So if you really stop the SIP when the markets are low, you're actually defeating the purpose of SIP. Correct. So I would strongly advise people not to stop the SIPs. You should please continue, because they are the most cost-effective investment, I would say, strategy that you can use out there. I will not go one step forward and say that invest more when market crashes. That's not my call right now. But I would definitely say you should not, because history has shown us over time that, if you have continued your SIP, you have only markets have regained, and you've only made money after the markets have regained, right? And SIP has only benefited people. Okay. So I think this is this last slide from my end. So now that, as I said, we started by, okay, what's the number? And once we have decided the number, what are the avenues that we have? How do we really go and invest? What is the strategy that we should apply depending on our age, our understanding of ourselves, and then figuring out where do I fit what kind of age specific strategy do I really go for? Defining the goal, defining the number of years that we have for ourselves, and then defining that what is the investment vehicle that I've used. So if we can just break that down, I've just tried to give you an idea. If you want, you can take a screenshot of this. Phase one, I would say, would be assessment and planning, right? You need to look at your current financial standing, include your assets, select a suitable financial strategy based on what you heard, right? And identify where do you really fit in. And once you've done that, gather your necessary documents, review your insurance, set up the plan. Okay, what you need to do, whether it be senior citizen, saving scheme, mutual funds, FDs, whatever you decide as your age specific plan, get there. You link your bank accounts for all this seamless activity, right? And then your phase three could be deployment and automation, right? You redeploy. If you've got retirement benefits, if you're already retired, if you're at 60, you can start doing that. Establish your systematic withdrawal plans. Create your own income calendar if you can, and automate your insurance payments. So that's how you can get to your phase three. And after that, then it's all about monitoring and protecting. We spoke about estate planning, setting up a will, setting up a review cadence for yourself. And as I said, keep fine tuning because circumstances are going to change. We don't need to change with every time the circumstance change, but we have to review it at a particular period. You can decide a period, it could be 30 days, it could be 90 days, it could be half a year, it could be 1 year. Typically, I would say if you're looking at your overall financial plan, then a 1 year period is a good period. Minimum 6 months is what I would recommend. And that gives you a good kind of structure for you to kind of move forward and also assess where you're going. I think that's it from my end. I hope you found this useful. And at any point of time, if you feel you have anything to reach out to me for, please feel free. I have mentioned my numbers. I've mentioned my email ID. My LinkedIn ID is there. I'm putting up a lot of information on LinkedIn, trying to educate as many people. Right now, it's more around the 25 to 35 age group. I will start something on LinkedIn for the 45 to 55 age group also. Because these are the two extremes. I'm very keen they get the right kind of education for them to make their investment choices. 35 to 45 will come to later, but these two extremes definitely need it. And I'm putting some articles around structured frameworks around financial planning, how you can do that starting off in life. And also on insurance, right? Right now, there's a series which I'm concluding on insurance. Next week onwards, I intend to start a series.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Menon, your voice broke up for me a little. It might be my internet, but do you want me to run the poll?
Yes, I think that would be useful.
Okay. Yes. It should be on everyone's screen now. Is it visible? Yeah.
Yeah, it is visible. And the idea just to let people know, because as I said, today was more about an holistic overview of everything. So if you need any specific deep dives to be done, because topics are wide, there are a number of topics, but if you need specific deep dives to be done, then I think Wisdom Circle will organize similar kind of sessions where we can deep dive further into specifics. So if there is anything beyond these three also, please do mention. You can put it on an email to Ebavi and she will add that up, and then we can think through as to what we need to go about.
So thank you, Mr. Menon. I'll take this moment to tell everybody. I can see it's coming in on the chat. So I will be sharing an email once the session is over. I know some of you want resources, some of you want the slide deck, some of you just want to be able to connect with Mr. Menon and get more insights from him. So I'll be sharing an email talking about what resources he'd be very willing to share with you, and also if you have more questions, how you can get in touch with him. So all of that information will be sent to you via email, and there's also a very short feedback form. So if you have a minute to spare, please also try to fill that in. It will help Wisdom Circle as well know how the session went and what other kinds of sessions you would like us to organize. So that email, I'll be sending that once the session is over by around 5:45. So it will be reaching your inbox.
Sir, can you go back to few slides?
Sure.
Just want to see few slides.
Yes, it's no.
Uh,
Vaibhavi, yeah, okay. Yeah, which one would you like to go through?
Go back. Yeah, this one. This one, yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Screenshot of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 52 answers that have come in, and I'm going to end the poll. Yes. Mr. Menon, it should be visible now, the results of the poll.
Yes, it is. Fair enough. I think we can work on this, Vaibhavi, accordingly.
Yes, sir.
Will this be a regular series? Yeah.
Go ahead. I was actually, I let Vaibhavi answer that question, but I thought that, some of the stuff that I mentioned today, because as I said, I was trying to cover a wide scope, right? The canvas is really huge in this subject. Okay, and it's not possible sometimes in a 1.5 hours to really go deeper and explain everything to everyone, right? So, for example, simple topics like mutual funds, some of them know it very deeply, some of them know it superficially, some of them don't know anything, right? So, depending on where you are in that journey, explanations will be very different, right? And understanding that I need to give will be very different, and so on and so forth. So there's no end to how many series you can do in these kind of things, right? Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah, because it all depends on your age, your understanding of each of these financial products, and so on and so forth, right? Your risk-taking capacity, tolerance, many things actually. It's not as easy as chalo kar diya types, Yeah.
All right. Mr. Menon, shall we take questions from
Yes.
our audience now? All
Yeah.
right. Okay, the first one I can see is, sorry, I'll also quickly share how we'll do this. If you have any questions, you can share them on the chat, so that way we can take them one by one. Or if you would like, please use the raise hand on Zoom, and we can then take questions from everybody one by one. Please try to not unmute and just speak, because then we'll accidentally end up talking over each other. So please share it in the chat, or you can use the raise hands feature on Zoom, so we can take them one by one. With that covered, so there's a question from, sorry, just trying to find it. There's a question that reads, how SWP works? Will it withdraw equally from all funds, or manager will use some strategy?
Yeah, so SWP will be based on what you communicate to the fund manager, right? So if you have a particular requirement for an income, let's say they said, okay, 27,000, 30,000 rupees, you ask for 30,000 rupees worth of units to be redeemed. It could be from one scheme, two schemes, three schemes, depending on what you want to redeem at any point in time. Ideally, because equity, the longer you stay in equity, the longer returns and the better returns that you get. So if you have the right kind of asset allocation, and bucketing system is one of the ways in which you can get your right kind of allocations, asset allocation to be done. It's best to get your SWPs to be started from the debt funds, right? Because debt funds give you predictable returns. You know that whether the markets are up or down, you're going to get your 6.5, 7%. So, let the money come out from there at the beginning. And then, as I said, if you put it into a bucketing system, every time the debt funds have come down in value, you will again replenish that with further debt funds, right? So that's how you can really think of this.
All right.
So
Thank
that you
you.
give the maximum time for your equity funds to really grow, compounding and so on and so forth, right?
All right. Thank you, sir. There's a question. Mr. Satish Rao has raised his hand. Sir, would you like to go ahead and share your question?
Yeah, thank you for the session. Sir, my question was how for this SWP, when you withdraw a certain amount, like say 30,000 in the example which you took, how does the taxation work? Is it does it work on the appreciation the units have given, or I don't know how does the
It is
taxation work?
on the capital gain. Yeah, the gain that you have made on that particular units that you have redeemed. So the number of units, for example, okay, let me say, let me share that. I had kept some slides on that. Uh, I knew this will come, but I got it hidden. Can you see this? Not yet. I think it's still hidden. Or can you see it? Can you see these slides?
Can see
Yes,
it.
sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
can see, can see.
You
Yes,
can
yes.
see it. So let me show you how exactly this works because that will help you. I think will help everyone. I was not sure of how much time we will have. I have some 5, 7 more slides which would have given you absolute clarity. But here we go. Okay, so what happens is, oh shucks, sorry. Ah, what happens is, let's assume you have got 50 lakh of rupees which you have invested, and you have invested at an NAV of 10 rupees. So what you have with you is 5,000 units, right? 5 lakh units. For that 50 lakh.
Sorry, could you just put it into the presentation mode? It's in
When
the...
I put it into, let me then come out of hide slide on this slide and then put it. Yeah, here we go.
It's not in presentation.
Yeah, now it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you have got 50 lakh of rupees and you are now investing that money into a, let's say, debt mutual fund where you should expect that you will get between, let's say, 6% to 7%. Now, debt also doesn't really get spoken about, but there are multiple debt funds, right? You get money market funds, you get liquid funds, you get low duration, high duration. So the government yields. So it's a storyline in itself. It's a conversation in itself. Some of you would be aware, some of you will not be, most of you will not be, is what I sense. Okay, but and that's where I asked that question around mutual funds and those kind of stuff, right? Do we need more depth? But yeah, so let's go back to this. So you have around 50 lakhs, you have invested that at say 10 is the NAV, current NAV for that, right? You get around 5 lakh units. As the NAV grows, depending on the debt fund that you have invested, let's say 6.5%, 12%, so it goes from 10 to around 10.054 is what the NAV grows. When you redeem your SWP, you are going to redeem n number of units. Okay. Because you needed 27,000 in this particular example, I said you need 27,000 rupees as a monthly income. You are going to divide this 27,000 with the 10.04 where the NAV is today. So you are going to redeem 2694 units. Now, what was the cost for your 2694? It was at 10 rupees. So you had paid 26,940 rupees for this. What gets taxed? Only the gain gets taxed. So 27,000 minus 26,940, that is your 143 rupees is what is going to get taxed. That's what I had shown you in the slide that when you go for FD, the entire income of 26,000 gets taxed. When you go for SWP in debt funds at 6.5% or whatever, only the 143 rupees gets taxed. And that's how you can really make this, annual saving vis-a-vis going for an FD solution. Is that clear now?
Yeah, got it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. There are quite a few questions that have come in on the chat, so I'll try to go through them one by one. So Mr. Nakul Subramaniam has asked, in your bucket strategy, you assume that 7 years will ensure that equity are straight-lined and predictable. However, what could be a good risk strategy if this assumption does not work?
Yeah. So Nakul, if you really look at it, in the bucketing strategy, and I believe you asked me about the bucketing strategy because I missed Vaibhavi what she said. You spoke about the bucketing strategy.
Yeah, that's correct, Rajesh.
Correct. Okay. So Nakul, the bucketing strategy, I would leave the periodicity to your understanding. Okay. Now, there are enough historical evidences which show that if you have invested over a period of time and if you give time, to the market, anywhere beyond 10 years, if you have invested in the market has always given you more than 7% returns. They have also given you 21% returns, but on an average, they fall between 7% to 21%. And the chances of you losing money in the market, and there have been, if you look at from a 10-year period story, which means 1980 to 1990, 1981 to 1991, similarly 2010 to 2020, 2015 to 2025. If you look at these number of sessions, there have been 32 such sessions which have happened. And in each of the session, we have got more than, we have not lost money. We have got more than around 7% returns. Each of them. There have been sessions in between where you have got as high as 21%. There have been sessions in between where you have got average of around 15, 16, 17% returns. And at a CAGR over 46 years, Nifty has given you around 16% returns. So these are data points. Now it is for us to use. And if you feel that instead of 7, I should take a 10-year bucketing strategy, that's perfectly fine. I've just given you an example as saying you can take it as 1 to 3 years, 3 years to 7 years, 7 years to 10 years. It all depends on what is the retirement corpus you have actually got to, and the withdrawal ratio that we spoke about. So as I said, it's not one size fits all. Each one, and that's why I keep saying that whenever you need a personalized plan, you need to consult your advisor who will be able to help you to create a plan for you depending on your circumstances, your risk-taking capacity and ability, tolerance, and so on and so forth, right? So, but at a high level, bucketing is what you should look for because you are giving time for equity. Now, whether you give 7 years, you give 5 years, you give 10 years, as I said, is dependent on your age specific strategy. Does that kind of help you understand this better, or do I need to further clarify?
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. I think that makes sense. What you say is absolutely. It's only in you also talked about the sequence of return, right? And then we had Japan market didn't go anywhere for 10 years, US during the great. So I mean, it does create some uncertainty. I was just saying, is there a strategy which you will employ, which
See,
I mean, it's not perfect, but probably we can take it offline and talk to you separately.
yeah,
No problem.
definitely. Just because you touched upon Japan, let me just talk about that also. Just, at least my thought process, honestly, not necessary that everybody should go with it. But I have figured out that, we speak about Amrit Kal and all that stuff. The fact remains, Indian demography has changed, right? Now, you know that from 2017 onward, you have got more than 50% of our population, which is greater than, is in an income generating population. And, if you really look at when this has happened earlier in the past, whenever these kind of situations have happened, that the demography and the population has gone more than 50% income generation, most of those countries have shown more than 10% GDP growth. Okay. And here we are talking around 6.5%, right? In India. Most of them have shown 10%. And obviously, Japan, China, and many of the Asia Pac countries have actually gone through this phase in the past. And typically, when these phase comes, this thing happens. This remains for around 37 years. So, which means if it has started at 2017, typically this golden age that we talk about is going to last for approximately 37 more years, which means somewhere around 2054. So, if you ask me personally, where am I on this journey and what do I believe about India? I am a bit bullish around India. So, I would not say everybody has to be, but at least from an India perspective, with some of the information that is floating around, I feel a bit more relaxed in being bullish about India. Obviously, there are multiple other reasons for which things can go southwards, but this is one single point that I keep in mind whenever I think of removing my money from equity and so on and so forth.
Thanks. That's very helpful, Rajesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Menon. So, then, okay, there are a few more. So, Mr. Suren N has asked, is there tax advantage on debt MFs?
See, today what has happened is, all debt gets taxed at the income slab that you are in. So, so you don't get, earlier you had till, before 2023, if you have invested in debt funds and all that stuff, you had a advantage. There have been multiple changes to the taxation rules, but anything which has gone after 2023 into debt, you get taxed as per your income tax slabs. So currently, if you get any debt returns directly, then from a taxation perspective, the capital gains tax will get taxed as per your income tax slab. The SWP advantage is your capital gains itself is low.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Menon. So the next question that we have is, how is investing 10% in silver ETF and gold ETF, and whether it is used as SWP?
Sorry, come again.
How is investing 10% in silver ETF and gold ETF, and whether it is used as SWP?
See, my simple answer to this one is without knowing your risk profile, without understanding your existing corpus, I wouldn't be able to answer this question in its entirety, right? And, it's best that we have an offline conversation. I understand where you stand from your own perspective, because this is personalized conversation. There are many other elements which come to it. Either you can speak to me or you can speak to your financial advisor. Somebody has to look at your existing portfolio, has to look at your age, your corpus, and then suggest, because this is asset allocation. We need to be very clear. These conversations are best not to be had transactional. Somebody has to look at the assets that you have, look at how do they, because there has to be an interplay between the assets. Many a times there is negative correlation between some of these assets. So for example, typically they say between a US market and an India market there is a negative correlation. Okay, so even if it's not negative, at least they don't move at the same pace. So it is good to have assets, money is allocated in different places, because gold again is a hedge for inflation, and many a times when markets tank, gold goes up. You have seen that recently. That has not necessarily happened during this war. So many things change, and hence it's best you look at asset allocation, deploy your money in different assets. One of the other plays in your favor. Finally, you are looking at around 10 to 12% returns on your overall portfolio. There's no point in looking at only, because typically we look at just equity and say, oh, I made 18%, I made 20%, or I lost 4%. But if you split the asset in such a manner that you structure it in such a manner that at all points of time you are aiming for around 10 to 12% and leave the rest for compounding to take care, I think we are all in a good situation. We will all be in a good situation.
From post office also, there's some senior citizen scheme, right?
So the senior citizen scheme is available in its own. So you can look at that. That is giving you 8.2%. So
how does that compare with the floating rate bonds from RBI?
that can also be explored. That's not a problem. The floating rate bonds is also not an issue. See, as I said, there are multiple schemes out there. We can pick and choose any of those depending on the strategy that you're looking for, right? There are various. It depends on also the interest component that you're looking for. These two that I spoke about, which was around government bonds and senior citizen savings, and as I said, the PM Yojana, were more for people who are in the 60 plus age group and would like much more stable returns, 100% predictable and higher returns. They seem to be the highest returns at that point of time. A debt bond that you spoke about could be more favorable for a 55 age group and those kind of stuff, right? But there's absolutely no issues. It's an RBI bond, so it should not be a problem there from a predictability of income.
All right. Mr. Menon, I feel like we've answered as many questions as possible. I know that there are quite a few more that are in the chat. So what I would request everybody to do is, if it's possible, please take a photograph of the different ways you can get in touch with Mr. Menon. It's visible on your screen right now. He's told me that he'd be more than happy to connect with everybody one-on-one, share any resources that you might need and help you out further. I will also be sending out an email with all of the resources that you can get and how you can access them as well. So for the retirement number calculator, the estate planning checklist, net worth tracker, all of that, I'll be sharing an email and you can reach out to Mr. Menon to receive all of these resources and for any other queries that you might have. But in the interest of time, unfortunately, we won't be able to take any more questions. But please do reach out to Mr. Menon if you have anything else that you would like to discuss. And lastly, thank you again, Mr. Menon, for conducting the session, for doing such a holistic overview of all of the different avenues that are available to people. We truly appreciate it. And I will definitely connect with you to figure out how we can have another session where we maybe deep dive into one more aspect of financial planning. Thank you. And thank you,
Fair
everyone.
enough. Thank you, Vaibhavi. And thank you, everyone. You were all participative. I hope this was useful. Look forward. Please feel free to call me anytime you wish to, or catch me on my email. And happy to share whatever insights I have around this. Vaibhavi, if I can also get the chat, is there a way to just send the chat across so that if there is some question that somebody has asked which have not been answered out here, I will kind of get onto that one-on-one.
I can save the chat.
Yeah.
It's done, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
I can share it with you. All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.